Hello everyone and welcome back to the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my sidekick, Austin, TheDayGhost. And tonight's commentary comes to us from requester David Crabtree, who asked us on Patreon, and thanks a lot to him, to tackle the 1987 canon classic, Masters of the Universe, which, of course, does not have He-Man in the title, but it's the old He-Man movie. I did a scripted Superhero Rewind on this several years ago now, I think maybe back in 2016, and remembered very little of this coming back to this for this commentary, Austin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd never seen this before.
Had you not? How much did you know about it?
I knew that they went to Earth because that was like the big thing everybody talks about. And like when Thor came out, they were like, it's like Masters of the Universe again.
It's just like Masters of the Universe, yeah.
Yeah, we still compare things like that back to this movie. I knew Frank Langella was Skeletor and that he wears gold armor at the end. And I knew Lundgren was He-Man. And that was about it.
Yeah. Okay, so you
and Courtney Cox.
And Courtney Cox, yeah. And you probably didn't know about Robert Duncan McNeil because you're not a Star Trek guy, but I'll talk about that.
Which one's he again?
Her boyfriend.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. That's right.
Yeah, so that's Tom Paris in Voyager.
No, of course, because I watched the Red Letter Media commentary, and Mike talked about that for like 20 minutes.
Right. Well, what else is there to talk about, though? It's a little bit of that. No, there's some interesting background here, and we'll talk about, of course, as we always do, the stuff that does work with this. It is very, very B-movie-ish. It's very padded because it's weird because it's a low-budget movie that has to cut corners like going to Earth instead of spending the whole time with the Fantasyland stuff in Eternia, and yet it's the biggest budget that Canon had thrown in a movie, and that was a big mistake for them ultimately because this was just as they were getting close to Chapter 11 and falling apart, and the movie literally ran out of budget in the middle of filming, and was like, production was stopped before the movie was done filming, and that certainly compromises it. So we'll talk about all of this as we go, but we're about to watch it with you. I've got my old DVD copy. I know this is on Blu-ray now as well. I think there was an anniversary thing put out, what would it have been now, like 10 years ago? For like the 25th maybe, but I don't have that. I don't know that this is streaming anywhere.
I have it on Amazon here, but I think it's through like an Amazon add-on. I'm not sure.
What is it, like Stars or one of those?
I think it's on Stars, yeah.
Okay. So hopefully you've got a way to watch it with us. I know a lot of people don't do that. We'll do our level best to, and especially with these rewind commentaries, to make this a podcast. So you should be able to theoretically listen to us without the movie, but it'll certainly be enhanced by looking at the film as we go. If you are going to watch it with us, make sure to get your disc or however you're going to watch it at timestamp 0 and get ready to press play when I say now. Austin, do you have any kind of weird logos or anything at the beginning of yours?
I have the MGM logo.
Do I have an MGM logo? Let me look here.
Yeah,
no, mine opens immediately with a Canon logo.
Okay, here, I'll let that play.
I'm glad I asked, because you would have been behind me the whole time.
Yeah, it's a good thing you did.
Just let me know when you're ready, and we'll go ahead and get right into it.
Okay, hold on. Let me just go back a second so I can line this up better. I just wanted to let it play to make sure there was nothing else after MGM.
Oh, sure. No problem. Thanks a lot for joining us live. If you're doing that late on a Monday this time, usually we do these on Fridays. And quick mention too, while Austin's setting up, in a couple weeks, Friday, I'm going to have a guest. Kareem is going to come on to, I guess I'll just throw this out right at the start, to talk about the Ultimate Avengers movies. We'll be watching both of those, so look forward to that. Austin's going to be out that week. Austin, are you ready, sir?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, cool. Everybody, please press play. 1 second. Let me get my counter going here. Everybody, please press play right now.
You know we're in for a good time when the Canon logo comes on. From the people who brought us Death Wish 4, it's Masters of the Universe.
A company that made a lot of films that people would probably like to shoot out of cannons.
Including this one.
But not Austin, because Austin loves things like Superman 4.
Oh yeah, Superman 4 is genuinely the third best Superman film ever made. Which isn't saying anything.
That's true. And this came out the very same year. And
crazy.
Both movies contributed to tanking the studio.
That makes sense, because when I was doing research for this, I heard somebody say that this broke them, and I always thought it was Superman 4, so that makes sense that they're both the same year.
Yeah. I want to say both probably had to have contributed, considering, again, this was the biggest budget they had. And I do have to say that despite the cheapness you can see in getting away from Eternia, the stuff that's on Eternia, you can see where the money went.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely have to give it credit for set building and costumes and stuff. They had this huge set built between two sound stages, two adjacent, like joining the sound stages, for Skeletor's palace.
Mm-hmm.
And there's matte paintings in the background of that, but most of it is all actually there, and the scope of it is true, and it's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's pretty big. So right off the bat, these credits, it's just the Superman credits, but also it's so weird that they got the composer from the Rocky movies for this.
It's weird. It's almost like Dolph Lundgren and him came over together or something.
Yeah.
Because this is the very next thing that Lundgren did after Rocky IV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And they got that composer, and they're like, just do Superman.
Yeah. And it's a real generic theme. What's weird is the theme, it sounds like, is almost trying to dance around the actual He-Man theme. Like, it isn't that theme, but it's in the ballpark, and it's very strange. It's like we didn't have the rights to use that.
Yeah. Well, and then we have opening narration at the start, and we were so close to having it go, and the Masters of the Universe.
Well, and if you were a kid that was a fan of this stuff from of course, the cartoons and the toys, you probably would have been just freaking out at that opening shot, because that matte painting right at the start showing Castle Grayskull, it's wonderful, and it looks right out of that material. And the thought I had on this viewing that I had not had before, Austin, was, of course, this movie bombed. It didn't make any money. It was a big problem for the studio, like we've said already. And if it had had the animation treatment, of course, it wouldn't have gone to canon, it would have been a totally different thing, but if it had gotten the animation treatment that Transformers did a year before this, that could have been a massive success.
Oh, definitely.
Relative to animation.
No, this movie, it starts with that Castle Grayskull shot, and it's all downhill after that.
I don't think it's all downhill after that. I would make the argument that if we simply had stayed, and I know a lot of people feel this way, so I'm not going to say anything controversial or exciting here, but if we had just stayed in Eternia and it had all been this stuff, especially just relative to what the rest of the movie is, I think that A, it would be remembered more fondly, and B, it might have made a little bit more money.
Possibly.
But I also don't know what the advertising was like for this movie. I don't know how well the word of mouth. I don't know if people knew about it.
Yeah.
Because I get the sense that was probably part of its problem, is that it just wasn't real well.
When they ran out of money filming it, I can't imagine they had a ton of money to market it.
To market it, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it didn't have merchandise, which was probably a mistake. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, yeah. It's a He-Man movie. It's all about toys, and it didn't have its own toy line. But that's very understandable, because Mattel was kind of in trouble with the He-Man toys as this was being made. Like, they weren't selling as well as they had before.
Oh, okay. It was kind of already going downhill.
Yeah.
I did wonder that with this, is if it was maybe also just an issue of it being too late.
Yeah. Well, Ninja Turtles was all the rage as this was coming out. Like, that had kind of taken the place at that point, or was beginning to. I mean, it's 87, but that was an overnight success when that happened. So, like, Transformers, and because, like, this is, or He-Man, the popularity of that is a little bit before my time. So I wasn't there for the heyday of He-Man or Transformers, and Ninja Turtles had really eclipsed all of that.
Yeah, by that point.
And then some of the Fox cartoons in the early 90s. Like, it's Ninja Turtles, and then it's Batman and X-Men and Spider-Man and all that stuff.
So, I think He-Man himself looks great. I think the choice to give him the cape, I think, is a better choice than how he looks in the cartoon.
I like it, too. I even like his chest thing a little bit better.
Yeah. But Skeletor is a giant downgrade. I think Frank Langella does the best he can with this, but they do not know how to shoot Skeletor in this movie.
I would argue that they don't know how to shoot him until the very end, and then it's too late. What's really strange about that costume is it looks cheaper. I don't know if you'll agree with this. Hey, look, it's like Spaceballs.
Well, this is just... this is like your Hunter from the Future. They're the exact same villain designs, but...
Yeah, well, and I know that they made a movie right after this that used these sets and some of the costumes and stuff.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I forget what that's called, but apparently there were releases of that movie that were that were actually called Masters of the Universe 2. Just because they used so much stuff from this movie, even though none of the characters in this were there, and the story was a completely different thing.
That's amazing.
We gotta have our obligatory dwarf character, because it's an 80s fantasy film.
Yeah, and what I don't understand is, because they did this because they couldn't do Orko, because they couldn't do a guy that's flying around.
Yeah.
But at this point, when you're ripping off Star Wars so hard, like, just make him like a little Jawa guy.
Well, and you're making so many compromises with things anyway, and still calling them, like, what's his name? The one villain besides Skeletor that's actually from the show. Beastman? Yeah, Beastman doesn't look anything like he did in the show.
Mm-hmm. Well, I said that too. I think one of the biggest issues this movie has is there's just way better movies that are doing this of that decade. Like, you could have done the Beastmaster thing and just given him a tiger. And it doesn't have to be like painted or whatever. It can just be a tiger.
Yeah, and even if the tiger is only on screen for a couple of scenes and they contrive a reason for him not to be there the rest of the movie, at least he would have had it.
Yeah, exactly.
there's an excuse that Goddard, the director, makes in his commentary about why they don't use any animal features for vehicles and things, because all the vehicles in the He-Man show are based on animals. He's like, well, you can't do that in live action, and I'm like, okay, but like, explain a little bit further. Like, I get the Orko thing. I'm with you. They could have just had a character named Orko that was a different thing, but like, you can't have. For instance, Skeletor's big floating boat thing, it can't look like an animal. You can't like all that's just sculpting. It can't you can't just have like gargoyles on things. I don't understand that. Mm-hmm. Just design them that way. He's like, oh, we decided to make everything gothic instead. I'm like, like gargoyles? Just have gargoyle heads on everything. Nobody would complain about that.
Yeah, that would be cool. Oh, sorry, but before that, you were saying with Skeletor that you think he looks better near the end. Are you talking about just during that fight in the climax?
No, the point I was gonna make is, and this is the point where I feel like I'm likely to be off on an island, but I feel like he looks cheaper when he's shot farther away, but when you get right up on the face, those shots look better.
Oh, I just grabbed the opposite.
And I think maybe some of it's just the way it's lit and what Langella's doing with his face. But my favorite Skeletor shots, and that's why I used it in the thumbnail, are when we're right up on his face.
My issue with the close-ups is I can just see the seams. And I can see, like, the mesh on the nose and whatnot.
I guess I don't mind that for the time.
Yeah, it's...
Like, I get that they're working with what they have.
Mm-hmm. I just think they need to light it better.
Yeah.
Like, for me, he's too lit up. That's why he looks so bad.
Which is interesting because the reason everything on Earth is shot at night is because they were, and I think rightly so, Goddard was worried that we wouldn't believe these characters in broad daylight. So it's interesting that you say that Skeletor is too lit up.
Yeah, like in that last scene that in the throne room, like, it's so bright in that scene that he's almost like glowing.
Yeah, and it's interesting that this movie has lighting issues like that because, and I don't want to just talk about the director's commentary the whole time, but Goddard spends way too large of a percentage of his commentary just talking about lighting.
Well, that's why I wondered if you meant he looks better at the end, because I think when they shot the climax, they didn't have a full crew, so like they didn't have proper lighting setups.
Yeah, well, and like at that point they just turned off all the lights.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah, so like that's why I wondered if you meant it just looked better in that scene.
So I will not be able to help but bring up Star Trek in a few places because there are a couple of really major connections, and besides the Tom Paris thing, which I'll talk about later, one of them is Michael Westmore, the makeup designer for this movie, and the timing is really interesting. I bring him up now because you were talking about the mask. This is before he has as much, obviously, experience with alien prosthetics as he will have in Star Trek when he will work from 87 to 2005, so 18 years doing all of the prosthetics for every single Star Trek show. He's the guy. Oh, wow. He does all of it. And that starts this year. So he does Master of the Universe, and then either simultaneous with it or immediately after, he starts on TNG.
That's crazy. And I will say with his work, Geldorf or Grendel or whatever, the little dwarf character.
Gwildor.
He looks pretty good. And I don't think you can tell that actor's like 50, 60.
He's like 65.
Yeah, he was in Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think he does a great job. And again, that character is real typical, and he's just kind of a comic relief character, and he's also just there to facilitate the plot, of course. He's the guy who creates the cosmic key, and we need him for exposition, and also to constantly make up new units of time measurement. There's like 19 different units of time measurement that he throws out throughout the whole movie, and you can't tell me there's any consistency to any of it. But anyway, he's shockingly not annoying, like relatively. He should drive me insane, and he doesn't exactly. Like, I don't love him or anything, but there are a couple moments with him actually that I even find kind of funny that I chuckle at.
I do find him really annoying, but it's more just on like a script level and whatnot. Like I don't really blame the actor.
But you agree that the actor's doing a good job.
Yeah, the actor's doing it fine.
Billy Barty is his
here
name.
With the Skeletor close up we just had, you can like see like a split on his nose from like the seam of it.
Well, you know, I never noticed that because I have a thing that's distracting about the nose that makes me not notice that, which is, and I don't know how exactly you get around this and still make it remotely looking like Skeletor, but Michael Westmore, in designing that, has black fabric where the inside of his nose and shadow is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And just the fact that you could, like, walk up and touch the black of his nose is very distracting to me.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier with, like, it's stuff like that. I can see the seams, I can see, like, the fabric on the nose. I think all the close-ups are really bad with Skeletor. And it sucks because Langella's doing a great job, but he's let down by production.
Well, his enthusiasm in playing the part is infectious. You can tell how good of a time he's having, and he really carries the movie. I would go as far as to say, and it would have been lame not having the rest of this movie to compare it to, but rather than what we end up with this movie, it would also have to be a lot shorter. If you had to, I'd rather the whole thing be a one-room drama on this set.
I would take that over what they made.
Than what we have,
100%. How weird is it that He-Man like never uses his sword in this movie?
Well, he fights with it.
He fights with it in like 2 scenes. He's always shooting people with guns.
He does shoot people with guns a lot.
And right now he's holding the toy of Megatron from the G1 cartoon.
That's hilarious. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that, and we didn't do this on purpose because this movie was requested again, but it's interesting that we're watching this the week after Barbie comes out or came out, and because this is Mattel, and I want retroactively, when they make more movies in that shared universe, this to just be roped in.
Yeah, might as well.
I want this to technically be the first movie in the Mattel shared universe.
With their, like, 40 movies that are in development right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently there's still a Netflix He-Man movie in the works that was supposed to come out, not for Netflix, but in the theater a couple years ago. Like, Sony was developing it for a while. Now Netflix has it, and it has a proposed date for 2024, which won't happen now, I'm sure, with the writers and the actor strikes. But last reporting was that was supposed to come out next year, but it won't now.
Like, a new He-Man movie's been in development hell for like 20 years.
Yes. And it's jumped around between companies. And But it has an actor attached.
Oh, yeah?
It's Kyle Allen, who I don't know from anything.
Yeah.
But
well, that's not always a given either. Like, no. The Rock's been attached to the Big Trouble in Little China remake for, at least since the mid-2000s.
I'm literally just bringing up every single thing I know about this movie so that we don't have long spaces of dead air as we're talking about it.
Because this movie has long spaces of dead air.
It certainly does. It goes without saying that it's got pacing issues, but it's even more than that. It's more that it's just like lacking in substance. And I certainly don't mind a thing based on a Saturday morning cartoon more or less being a live action Saturday morning cartoon. I appreciate that at least the characters from Eternia are all playing it straight. But if you're going to make a movie like that that's real cut and dry, that's not really about very much, that's a real typical good versus evil thing, and it's just with the trappings of these toys, however you feel about redesigns and that sort of thing, an like hour and a half is the absolute max length for a movie like that, and
Yep.
in this particular case it probably should have even been quite a bit shorter. I don't think that there's enough material here for any more than like 75 minutes, and I would honestly love to see someone make a cut that's dwindled down that far, because there are just long stretches, like with a lot of B movies that are trying to pad out the length and make it feel like a feature. There's just long stretches where not enough is happening, and we'll point them out as we go along. The bits that you really don't need at all.
Yeah, I also think we should spend more time with our characters from Eternia and differentiate them a little bit, because like He-Man, Man-at-Arms, and Woman are all on the same level. Like none of them have anything to do character-wise.
Yeah,
Like He-Man basically only shows up for action scenes and then disappears between them.
yeah, it's an easy cliched criticism, but they don't get anything like enough character development. And by the way, while we're on this scene, can I just mention that Goddard says in his commentary that the big reveal that they're on our planet is the cow. I don't think that's a reveal. There could be cows on many different worlds.
And why is there a cow in a random park next to like a KFC?
I didn't even have that thought. Yeah, it's just roaming around. There's this whole other story that local news is telling right now.
Yeah, I want to see that story. We just ran into like Bessie the Hell Cow or something. Like clearly it's more interesting.
I like it when they synchronize their locators.
Yeah. Good journey.
What were we talking about?
I don't know.
So it's a brave choice, Austin, to cast the actor. This is gonna sound mean to people, but and Lundgren, by the way, has really like grown and matured as an actor. I think he's done his best work in the last few years, honestly. Like he's turned into an actor. I think he gives a like near Oscar worthy performance in Creed 2. Like he's spectacular. He's only in a couple scenes. Just freaking rips it apart. I mean, he's wonderful. But for this, at this time when the man didn't hardly speak English, it feels like we cast the stunt double to play the role. Mm-hmm. I mean, he would have been great for the He-Man stunt double, but he can't deliver this dialogue. He doesn't have the right sort of presence, and it kind of feels like the movie knows it, and like it's almost hiding him half the time. Like it doesn't really feel like it's his movie. It's almost like appropriate that He-Man's name is not in the title, because he feels almost like a supporting character in his own movie. Until the end, when all of a sudden it's this big showdown between the big acolytes of good and evil, and it does not feel like it's been about that the whole time. But the movie consistently is confused about who its real protagonist is, because when you get to the end and we're supposed to wonder, getting ahead of myself, but when you get to the end and we're supposed to wonder for a second if it's like a Wizard of Oz situation, and if Courtney Cox's character has been imagining all of this, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's not like we opened with her. We are 20 minutes into the movie and we're introducing the character right now that's supposed to be our eyes in. Okay, like you can't have your cake and eat it too like that.
And she works with Sarah Connor.
That's true. I had not thought of that. That it does look like that.
When we first cut to that, when I watched it for the first time before this, I was like, oh, this is just that first Sarah Connor scene in Terminator.
That's true.
And that actress looks like Sarah Connor.
So this restaurant is called Robbie's, and I find that amusing because we just introduced Robert Duncan McNeil, who everybody refers to as Robbie McNeil. So like, oh look, it's Robbie McNeil's restaurant.
We're about to get the amazing reveal that these characters from this like barbaric society think
vegetarians?
we're barbaric for eating meat.
Yeah, except for the war veteran guy.
Yeah, and she's stupid enough that she can't recognize bones.
Also, so like, I guess he's eaten meat in the past for some reason. It's not talked about at all. And he didn't raise his daughter, because it's pretty easy to miss that that's supposed to be his daughter, but it is.
Hmm.
He didn't raise his daughter with meat or knowing about meat or that people eat flesh at all. Yeah, I don't really understand their society.
No, it's not thought out at all. I see, Cap. I assume what happened was that everybody ate meat until somebody ate a person, and then he came back as Skeletor, and they're like, let's not eat things anymore.
There are a few jokes like this in the movie where it feels like it thinks we're clued into the joke, but I don't really understand what the joke is.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is disgusting. We're eating meat. I'm like, I don't know. On the one hand, I have to give them that we're not holding the audience's hand when it comes to. Again, it's having its cake and eating it too, right? Where it's treating the Eternia characters like their eyes in right now, where we're supposed to be watching them almost like we're trying to adjust, like we've never been to Earth. But then, of course, we keep jumping to the other eyes in characters that are the stand-ins for us, right? It's like we're doing both, but I guess it's supposed to be like this scene is amusing if you imagine that you're from there, but we don't know anything about Eternia, so it doesn't work.
Yeah. No, the society isn't thought out at all. Um, oh, so we were talking about Lundgren earlier.
Yes.
Um, it's so weird that they didn't just use like the Prince Adam thing. Once you, even if like that wasn't in the script, like once you cast that actor, you would think you would go, maybe we should have that.
And just have a different actor playing him most of the movie and treat it like a Lou Ferrigno Hulk situation.
Yeah, well, because then you can have Lundgren show up for action scenes, which is like all he really does anyways.
Yeah. It would be great if every time Lundgren shows up, the only dialogue he has is "I have the power."
That'd be awesome. Well, then he says it later on, and it doesn't make any sense. There's no
He just says it
connection
because
to
that's
that.
his catchphrase in the show. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it does make sense because that's it's morphin time. Like, he says, "I have the power" when he's transforming into He-Man.
Yeah, just make this guy Prince Adam.
Yeah. No, yeah, McNeil would have been fine.
Yeah,
That's a great
and
idea.
he doesn't look like too far off that it would be an issue.
Okay, I can't believe I'm suggesting this because I usually hate this, but again,
Are you gonna
I'm
say
comparing
that
it
Courtney Cox
to what
should
it is.
be?
No, I'm going to suggest that if you had to go to Earth, you could have made it an origin thing. And it could have
Yeah.
been this guy, even basically as he is our Prince Adam, and you give him the sword and you have him go to eternity and he becomes He-Man.
Oh, you know what you could do too?
I mean, I don't love that, but it would feel less lame than this. It would give us a reason to go here in the first place because these characters are superfluous.
Yeah. You know what you could do instead? Because it's called Masters of the Universe. It's not called He-Man. You still have He-Man and them come to Earth, and like this guy, he becomes Prince Adam, who is this guy, this actor.
Yeah.
And he meets Courtney Cox, and then you could do like something later on where like maybe He-Man's losing to Skeletor, and then they make Courtney Cox She-Ra.
Yeah.
You
Although,
could have done something like that.
I mean, they would have to be brother and sister at that point, or it would be weird.
I mean, they changed enough anyways. I didn't even know He-Man and She-Ra were supposed to be siblings, but
So, I have to bring this up because I know somebody that's been watching us a long time will, but I got a lot of jokes back in the old Rewind because I did this with stills, and I was talking about I made some joke about He-Man getting the ladies, and I put up a picture of She-Ra because I didn't know that either, and just all the comments
You
from
got
that
cut
video
for
is
that?
and then he showed his sister.
you pulled a Goyer with the She-Hulk.
So
But
yeah,
Cap,
I know it now.
come on now. He-Man doesn't go for the ladies.
I don't even remember what the joke was now, but
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the music motif with this movie? Because I don't really know where it comes from, or
It's
like
just
it
weird.
feels kind of random and arbitrary.
That's what I had, and I don't know how you could look at this thing and think it's a an instrument.
I don't know how at first glance you look at it and you think that. When you start pushing buttons and you're a musician and you can make it make different tones and do scales and stuff, then I get it.
But when it starts like making weird lights and it becomes the holophoner from Futurama, I, I don't know.
Well, what I don't understand about the light source thing, though, like once it becomes a product from Spencer Gifts, is everybody immediately looks at that, and like maybe it would surprise you more in the 80s than it would now, but it doesn't appear that alien to me or that supernatural to me. It's like, oh, okay, you have a music from his perspective, right? From McNeil's perspective, you have a device that plays music. It's an instrument, and when you turn it on, it also does a light show.
Mhm.
Couldn't that
Yeah.
have still just been a thing somebody made in Japan, like you thought?
hmm Absolutely. So here we get the bounty hunters from Empire Strikes Back,
Yeah, I had that too.
and half of them look like crap. Maybe a little bit more because Beastman doesn't look that great either.
He doesn't look great. Blade is the most generic thing ever.
Yeah. The only guy that's kind of cool is the lizard guy.
Yeah. But again,
you have-
he looks ripped off from Star Wars.
Oh, absolutely. But he looks better than like Granny from the Looney Tunes.
I will say I like Evil Lynn's look in this
Yeah, she's fine.
quite a bit. There's a couple costumes like that are really neat. Actually, I guess I'll go as far as to say that the women get the best treatment as far as costumes go because the girl on He-Man's team has kind of a cool suit too. The kind of white thing with all the straps. It's very 90s, but
I was gonna
I
say
realize
she's
this
got-
movie is not 90s, but that is a
you
very
like it
90s
'cause
look.
You like it because she's got the like 7 of 9 outfit, but just with Rob Liefeld straps on it.
You're saying I'm going to praise anything that's a cat suit on an attractive lady? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I mean, there might be truth to that. I don't know. I thought it was a well-designed costume.
And I'm gonna be the He-Man in this review and praise anyone that's just a man in underwear.
When I was a kid, I always thought He-Man was the most redundant name for a superhero.
Oh no, he
It's like,
has so
it's
much.
like your name was
testo-
Man.
He has so much testosterone. They masculined him twice.
Something else that Goddard talks about in his commentary that I thought was interesting is all of these guys get contact lenses, but to make them look more alien. And they almost did that with Evelyn, but they decided that her eyes were already with the costume, like jumped out at you and were alien enough. And they keep doing close-ups on it, and it actually really works. She has a really distinct, odd eye color, like naturally. And there's a line at some point toward the end where somebody says, "Oh, she's got those, like scary eyes or like weird eyes," and they just use her eyes, but it works.
So, because this is also what Ninja Turtles does in the second movie, why do you think that we don't have like any of the cartoon henchmen with this? Like, is it maybe like a merchandise thing where they think they can get toys and like they'll get more money out of original characters? Maybe.
So I didn't get any insights about that from Goddard's commentary because it sounds like he's being diplomatic and not trying to throw too many people under the bus.
Yeah.
But the sense I get is that it was a Mattel issue, maybe. Take all this
Okay.
with a grain of salt, but what I do know for sure is that Mattel held the reins real tight at the beginning of the production, while simultaneously, apparently, according to Goddard anyway, in interviews and stuff, he doesn't talk about this in the commentary because he's being diplomatic, but apparently they waited too late to give to put in their half of the production budget. So they started without the money they were supposed to. So that could have had something to do with it. But also, they held the reins real tight in what he was allowed to do with characters, particularly with He-Man, apparently. Things like He-Man's not allowed to be too violent, he can't kill people, he's got to always do the right thing or whatever. He basically had to be like Superman. And then, apparently...
Despite that, he's robots, I think.
Okay, that makes sense. And then, apparently later in the production, as the toys were running out of steam, money-wise, like as they weren't making as much money, Mattel stopped caring as much and started letting Goddard just do whatever he wanted to. So my guess is they probably had, this is where I'm speculating, they probably had mandates about what the characters had to look like, and when he decided that he couldn't translate certain characters exactly on screen, they just made up people. And that might be why the real reason Orko's not there.
Oh, okay.
It might have been that he wouldn't have been allowed to call this guy Orko.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, if we can't make it look close enough, we're not going to do it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just...
And I realize Beastman doesn't really look anything like he does, so, like, maybe I'm wrong, but
like, Beastman looks close enough.
Close enough,
like,
yeah.
I can recognize that's who that's supposed to be. But it's just interesting, right? Because, like, this type of stuff, it's made for kids, and that's the audience that's going to find this the most lame. Like, they're going to be like, well, why can't I have, like, the actual characters he fights?
Well, and this was a consistent problem with relatively early adaptations of, you know, cartoon shows and comics and things like that, where you would start with, and I think this happened for various reasons. Sometimes it was people who were, you know, given a project that where they weren't really passionate about the source material, or they didn't know anything about it in the first place, and they would start with, and this still happens sometimes, but they would start with a basic idea and then want to make it their own and reinvent it, and maybe like use ideas they had for other things that they never got to put on screen, and so now they're turning, you know, Masters of the Universe or Steel or whatever it is, you know, into something else entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like obviously you can make something that's very different, but this movie has like no creativity, so it's just boring.
And again, I think all the creativity, again, at least relatively, I feel like I almost have to talk about this like Power Rangers, is in the Eternia stuff.
Yeah, and even that, and like obviously that's where the money went into. But my biggest issue with this movie is just every single thing that it does is done better elsewhere.
And it's all pretty derivative, right? Like,
yeah,
like the Decent stuff is kind of derivative. Like, I like the Skeletor hologram, you know, looming over everybody as he's saying that I'm about to take over as the eye is opening and all of that. But like, that's kind of just Superman again.
Yeah, but yeah, like the Emperor, which is what I was thinking of with that.
Yep.
But like, if you want just the Eternia stuff, go watch Conan, go watch Your Hunter from the Future, go watch Beastmaster. If you want like this fantasy thing on Earth, go watch Highlander. Like, everything that this movie has is done better elsewhere. That's why, because I went into it knowing it wasn't going to be good, but I was like, well, at least I'll probably get like a good schlock movie that I can have fun with.
It's not even as make-funnable as you would expect. There's things that are, particularly Dolph Lundgren trying to deliver dialogue phonetically. Like, that's legitimately funny in a number of places.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
The pronunciation of Skeletor. Which admittedly not only he does, you also get that from Gwildor or whatever his name is. Skeletor!
From Ganondorf.
So, you may not think, if this is your first time looking at this movie, that we're establishing a major action set piece here, but we are. This is like half an hour from now going to be where one of the major battles is, and it watches in the movie like maybe it's the first time you've seen it, like maybe it's the climactic battle, which would have been really embarrassing. But then the movie keeps going, and you almost kind of wish it was.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. This scene also, I think, is just like a funny thing when you think about the production of this movie, which is they paid to license out a Jimi Hendrix movie, but they weren't gonna pay to film the climax. Like, how much money had to have gone into that Jimi Hendrix song that played for like 30
Oh, I didn't even
seconds?
think of that. That's a good. That's a good call.
I didn't think about it until I watched the Red Letter Media commentary, and they talk a lot about how Canon's always just been really bad at mismanaging
Like money
funds.
money management. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm putting it into the wrong things.
I was thinking maybe it's possible that like somehow that riff you don't have to license, or is cheaper if all you play is the riff, or
I don't know, but like it just started playing again, so I don't
okay.
know.
There's also a lot of product placement in this movie that may or may not be accidental. You know, I find myself going like, did Burger King pay to be in this movie? Did Pepsi?
Well, Burger King had the toys, right? That was the thing.
Were there Happy Meal toys for this movie?
I always thought Burger King had Masters of the Universe toys. Like hearing people say that, but I could be wrong.
If that's true, I don't know about it.
Yeah. If that's the case, you'd think they would use that instead of Robbie's, but maybe they didn't want to do that and have the characters be like, "Oh, this disgusting thing."
So that's my favorite bad line delivery from Dolph Lundgren. He's in terrible danger.
He's in danger.
Danger. And again, he's doing his best. He's just miscast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he couldn't fully speak English yet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't be too hard on him.
No, he really watches, like, if you cast, and again, same year and same studio, he watches, like, if you cast Nuclear Man as Superman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Gene Hackman should have been the voice of He-Man. Destroy Skeletor.
So here comes Principal Strickland 2 years before or after he plays it.
And he shows up in a high school.
Yeah, and then he's gonna have a shotgun later, like he's got into. Like, he's feeling weirdly typecast.
Oh,
while playing a different kind of character. It's weird.
Yeah, the high school thing also just reminded me. This is something I didn't think of until the Red Letter Media commentary, and I'll try not to bring them up too much. But that action scene earlier with Courtney Cox and the villains was totally like written as they attack the prom, right? And then they couldn't afford to have extras.
I don't know. I didn't have that thought, but maybe.
Because it's just like she's just by herself in an auditorium before the prom, and then they show up and attack. Like, it's really weird when you stop and think about it.
Yeah, I kind of doubt that's what it is, but I could see why they would come to that conclusion just looking at the movie.
Because there's not a ton of extras in this movie.
So the problem is, I would think that you wouldn't run into that unless you shot it earlier, because where they get attacked is actually some of the earlier stuff they shot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, when they get attacked in the house.
But it could still be like they wrote it and then they realized, as production was beginning, like, yeah, we probably can't afford to pay a ton of extras to be in a prom sequence, because there's like almost no extras throughout this entire movie.
Well, there's a lot
some
more
in that last scene.
Yeah, but you see more in Skeletor's throne room than you see anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that, I think, is just... Yeah, so I mean, maybe you're onto something, because a lot of that, according to Goddard, is like people working on the production that they got.
I was going to ask if it was that, because they're all in masks anyways, so they're not...
So there's one scene where you see a bunch of guys with shaved heads, and those were crew members that he said, hey, if you shave your head, we'll put you in the production. And so they only needed like 4 or 5, but like 20 people stepped forward to do it, apparently.
Is that the part where they have the kid?
No, that's right at the end. We've already seen it.
Oh, okay.
It was a little bit earlier.
Oh, okay. Because you know about the kid thing, right? Where it was like a
Yes.
contest winner.
Yep. And Goddard talks about that in his commentary too. It's kind of weird that he's just rubbing Evelyn's neck right now. I didn't notice that before.
She's real sore. She slept on it wrong.
Yeah, I didn't really notice like any potential sexual chemistry between them before, but I think there's totally a thing going on with them.
I am rubbing your neck.
The whole reason he didn't send her in the first place, even though she's apparently the only competent person he has, is that he has to have her around all the time because they're deeply in love. And we don't know what's happening with them in between the scenes.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing is Skeletor's plan in this movie makes no sense. Because Skeletor has like the key thing, and you need the key thing to open up the wall behind them to get ultimate power.
Yes.
But he already has one. But he's like, He-Man has a second one, so I have to get him because only I may have this power. But he can just get it now. Like, what's stopping him?
So he has to wait until the eye fully opens for some reason. I think the idea is that he can't tap into the full power until that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a ticking clock.
Oh, okay. I was very confused by all that. And then Skeletor just killed the only good henchman.
Somebody in the comments, tell me if I'm wrong. Somebody that knows this movie better than we do. I thought the idea was that the only reason he's after them is because he's worried that He-Man's going to come back and stop him. But maybe it's more than that.
Well, and it's that, but like Skeletor is also
like maybe he needed that. Maybe he needed the cosmic key to get the thing starting to open in the first place. I don't know.
Well, he does, but he already has one.
Right. Yeah. But I think the only reason he's after He-Man right now is because He-Man has a key and could come back.
Yeah. But like he could just open it and take the ultimate power now. His whole thing is he's like, I need to get He-Man because only I may have a cosmic key. But like, just open it, Skeletor.
But like I said, I don't think he has control over when the eye can open.
Yeah. Yeah, and that might be the case. I might have just missed that. But like, I don't know. And Skeletor only like it's such an easy fix. Like just have one key and the heroes take it.
Isn't it really weird? No, I'm totally with you there. Isn't it really weird to have one of these MacGuffin plots? And it's one of the most obnoxiously stretched of them I've ever seen, where it would just, we're trying to get the key, we're trying to get the key. But he's already got one, and he's going after the hero who's got one, and it's just weird visually, where you have a MacGuffin that everybody's after, but both people always have one.
Yeah, no, it's super weird.
Or at least Skeletor's always got one. Like, I get that a lot of the way through the story, such as it is, He-Man's trying to get his hands on the one that they've got.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's really just a boring game of hot potato to stretch the movie as thin as we can stretch it.
Yeah, like this whole subplot that's a complete waste of time.
Complete waste of time. If I re-edited this movie, I would make sure that Skeletor coming through the portal is like your first act plot point.
Mm-hmm.
That should have happened 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, because why isn't Skeletor just sending his whole army? Because the whole reason, cynically, for why there's two is because they need a reason for Skeletor to be able to send his people through. But like, you could so easily rewrite it where like the portal opens up and a bunch of villains and heroes are sucked through, and maybe they're not all dumped out in the same spot. Like maybe they're just kind of spread out because whatever contrivance. But that's better than what's there.
So particularly with this shot, because of course a lot of this on Earth takes place in this warehouse, it looks very much like the Mario movie.
It's like a less cool Mario movie.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Reminded me a lot of that. Hey, look, Evelyn has detective vision from the Arkham games.
I love how cheap that prop is too, though. Like that came out of like a board game.
Yeah, or it was cobbled together from 3 other canon props of, other films.
Yeah, that scope is actually just one of the Death Wish scopes.
One of the big mistakes with this movie, I think, as much as I like this actor, is Principal Strickland is in way too much of this.
Yeah, and I just find him distracting. Like,
He immediately turns into a cartoon character after his initial introduction, where
yeah.
and he's used in a really counterintuitive way that I think is supposed to be like fun and charming because it's not what you expect, but it kind of just comes off like a waste of time and goofy for no good reason. Where it's like, oh, he's just gonna become one of our sidekick characters that sticks around the whole time. And initially, it looks like he's gonna be kind of a secondary antagonist for our human characters. Like, oh, he's gonna stand in the way of their being able to get the key, and he kind of tries to do that for a while.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
he's mostly
like
just
kind
there
of
as
a
like
side
another
antagonist for
comic
a
relief
minute.
character, and he keeps doing that weird thing with his lips.
When he only exists so that he'll hit buttons on the thing and make the villains show up.
How hard is it to contrive a way to just the villains are already here? Well, you don't even have to contrive a way. Like you said earlier, why doesn't Skeletor just send his entire army? And if you do, regardless of which one of us is right about the eye-opening thing, if it is a ticking clock, he's got more of a reason to just hurry up and, like, fire everything. He should be Nero in 09 right now. Fire everything.
Fire everything! And what is the motivation of this cop? He's like investigating this prom that was destroyed, and then a boy comes in and he's like, "Oh, my girlfriend was here," and he's like, "Okay, I'll come with him, and I'm just gonna take this thing he has now."
Yeah, I think the idea is supposed to be he's got a sense that there's some like weird larger thing at play and he wants to get to the bottom of it, but that prop could very easily just be a musical instrument. Like it's almost like he just has nothing better to do.
No, he's just mad because he's a slacker.
Goddard spends a lot of time in his commentary complaining about how little space there is to shoot in this house, and I'm like, yeah, it's a little house. Like,
Yeah, because this isn't a set. This is an actual house.
it definitely looks like an actual house.
One of my favorite bits in the Red Letter Media commentary for this is Courtney Cox is moving for like no reason, and like has nothing to do with anything. And they're like, they just didn't want to have to do set dressing, so they just put boxes all around the house and went, she's moving.
Oh yeah, there's one marked fragile.
Yeah, like that's all the set dressing is. There's just boxes everywhere.
I didn't even think about that. That's pretty funny. Yeah, Goddard pretty clearly, I don't know, he either is happier with his work than I feel like I would be if I made this movie, or, and there's some fun things here, don't get me wrong, he does a good job in places with his cinematography. I like some of his establishing shots and setups and stuff, but there's places where I think he's definitely patting himself on the back too much, and there's a couple bits where he'll be like, look at this is tight storytelling, and it'll just be that, like, there's 5 characters in a scene at in one shot. He's like look how tight the storytelling is. I'm like, you cannot say that about a movie that is an hour too long.
Well, and it should be stated that this is like his only movie. He was like a ride guy. Like, he would direct.
He worked on theme park rides.
Yeah, like he would direct like whatever the experience that you'd see at like different theme parks.
And of course, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I'm sure it'll come up somewhere, so I should probably just get the elephant in the room out. But he actually was supposed to make a musical film with Bryan Singer in 14, and at exactly the same time as they started putting that together, the sexual assault allegations came out against both Singer and him, and ruined both of their careers simultaneously. Apparently, they were close friends and allegedly did things to the same person. That's all I'll mention about that.
Yeah.
You know, for a guy who doesn't like adventure, it's weird that Gwildemdorf is having more fun than anyone else in this movie. It's weird.
Also, they're driving the Barbie car.
Yeah, he's got a pink Cadillac, because that's hilarious. Goddard mentions in his commentary that he actually threw in the Lord of the Rings reference with that character toward the beginning when he says, "I don't like adventures." That's just, exactly Bilbo Baggins, and it's not in character at all, because he clearly is having a wonderful time. I don't.
Yeah, well, in like 5 seconds from now, Grimace is gonna show up with like sunglasses and like in a really extravagant outfit.
Yes. That's actually the scene I'm thinking of when I say that. And actually is his funniest bit that I actually did kind of chuckle at.
Where he's like, "What's up, fellas?" I don't know.
Well, not that he's wearing that stuff. That's an obvious fish out of water joke, and there's a lot of those in this. Although it could have been more irritating than it is, I guess. But I do like the exchange where he's like, "If we wear these things, no one will recognize us." And then Principal Strickland says, "What is that thing?" And he says, "See?" Like, that's kind of funny. Okay, I like Robbie McNeil, but I do have to say it right now. Acting. Oh, there he is.
I mean, it's in this movie.
This is some. Oh no, it's McNeil that says it. This is some Alf stuff right here.
This movie would be better if he was replaced with Alf.
I agree.
Oh,
but
man,
again, there's no.
It's just like a live action version of that anti-drugs cartoon, the like All Stars or whatever.
Oh my god, that'd be wonderful.
You have, like, he is Alf, you have He-Man. You could just have like one of the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
oh no, that was 3 years later. But you could have Michelangelo.
Yeah, but no, do it around 90 or 91.
Yeah, that would be great. Frank Langella shows up and he's like, "I will have weed."
Oh no. He's just like he's a really twisted Captain Planet villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
He's just trying to give weed to children.
Yeah, you could bring in Jeff Goldblum from Captain Planet. He could be there too.
So I feel like as soon as anybody learned that Canon was making this movie, this scene is what what everyone should have imagined. It's He-Man and his Warriors 3 standing in a music store.
Well, considering it's canon, I think you mean He-Man and his Warriors free.
But I was just thinking that earlier when you were talking about how they're not really developed. I was like, oh, it's like the Warriors 3 if they got more screen time, but still nothing to do.
Well, it's like He-Man is Lady Sif, and the other 3 are the Warriors 3.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and isn't it weird? Some of the movies after this that make some of the same mistakes that this makes, like the first Thor film, like the first 2 Thor films.
Absolutely.
And those, of course, like have budgets.
Mm-hmm.
Like major motion pictures that don't have to do that. Like this does it because it's cutting corners. That does it because it's a little iffy about the material and whether audiences are going to accept it. I don't think that's necessarily a problem here, or at least once Goddard gets involved, it isn't. Like, I think Goddard actually is. This isn't even speculation. Goddard very clearly is interested in the fantasy elements and the comic book stuff with this. He really wanted Jack Kirby involved, and the studio said no. He was trying to make this as like fourth world as possible, but he was stuck with the Earth plot because that was there before he was hired. So he was hired to do a job which was make a He-Man movie that is mostly set on Earth and starring Dolph Lundgren. Those were the two things he was stuck with right at the start.
Which is funny because a lot of that fourth world stuff does go to Earth.
Yeah.
Like, you could have made it work. But, like, really, at the end of the day, like, I think we would all prefer if they just went, like the B-grade fantasy route and just shot in, like, the desert. Like what the beginning of the movie was doing before they go into the throne room.
Yeah.
Where they're on the rocks.
Well, and I was going to say, yeah, and it's hilarious, by the way, that shot in Vasquez Rock. They wanted to go somewhere more exotic, and they just didn't have the money for it. But I haven't watched a lot of the He-Man cartoon, but if memory serves from what little I have seen, isn't a lot of that just in forests and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, how hard is that? I feel like there's a He-Man movie
like,
that can be
cheaper
set...
movies than this that don't have to go to Earth.
There's a He-Man movie in an alternate dimension made by the same team that is set entirely in Eternia and cost less to make than this did.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because like I said, that's stuff like Beastmaster, that's Your Hunter from the Future, which are both that.
And yeah, we might complain if they don't build enough sets, if we don't see enough of Eternia, if we don't really see where any of these people live and all of that. But we don't get that with this anyway. We just pad it out with fights in a record store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that doesn't
or in a
bother
music
me
shop.
at all.
By the way, why do they have to have their big showdown in this music store?
Because it was a place they had access to.
Exactly. But in the... Oh, sorry. The sting here in Bill Conti's score sounds a lot like some of the stuff in the 1990 Ninja Turtles movie. I've been noticing things from lots of different movies in his score here. It's a pretty generic score. Like, it's fine.
Ninja Turtles is an independent movie. Like,
yeah.
What was that budget?
And they spent more on that than they were supposed to. That was a whole
I'm sure
with that studio. But it wasn't much more than this. I'd have to go look that up. This is $17 million. I don't think Ninja Turtles was more than 25 or 30 at the end of the day, but I'll look it up just to be sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's got like the Jim Henson stuff, and it's got a lot more puppeting, so that makes sense. But I just wondered, 'cause with it being an independent movie, I figured it couldn't be that much more.
But that, of course, was a massive fluke that it all turned out as well as it did.
Oh, yeah. And that's New Line, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, New Line distributed it.
Oh, okay.
Right? Or did they actually make it? I think they just distributed it.
I mean, that sounds about right. So we're about to just straight up get the Spaceballs moment. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, wow, dude. The Ninja Turtles movie cost $4 million less than this did. That's astounding.
That's nuts. Yes, we have the Spaceballs moment here. The is it really you, Father? Yes, my child. Would I lie?
I had a split second where I thought she was Jane Seymour. I was like, oh wait, no, that's not Jane Seymour.
This entire sequence, watching it the first time, I was just waiting, and when she finally did the reveal, I could yell, "Fooled you!"
That's great. Again, this just feels like a giant waste of time. Like, not only do I not care about her tragic backstory, not only is it very contrived and obvious and just not interesting, but yeah, obviously, like she's not what I'm here to look at in the first place. But also, we don't really do anything with her story. Like, okay,
Yeah.
she feels guilty for her parents getting on a plane, and it's not actually her fault. It's just the kind of guilt that any kid would feel about their parents getting killed, and like that's it's understandable, but it's just not that interesting, and we don't explore what little interesting there might be there anyway. And then by the end of the movie, there's easy time travel shenanigans to reverse it. So like, who cares?
Yeah. No, and your core audience is bored to tears with that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, any kid watching these moments is just going, "Where's He-Man?"
And I guess you
See
can
He-Man.
the only thing you could justify it with is, well, it lets Evelyn do something with her powers.
Mm-hmm. But they could have done something better, like she becomes one of them instead of becoming your dead mom.
Oh yeah, that would have been a great idea. They should have had Dolph Lundgren fight himself.
Oh my god, yeah, just it's that first X-Men scene.
Yeah, or Superman 3.
They have Dolph Lundgren do like really seductive things.
I do appreciate that they don't try to do a transformation effect. That's good.
No, the money for that effect went into getting that Jimi Hendrix song.
Is that I think the rest of that money I think there's also money they should have spent on the practical effect to actually blow up a camera later. Do you remember that? There's a camera that Tila shoots, and it just disappears instead of actually exploding, and it's amazing. I'm mentioning it now in case we talk over it later.
They'd also have saved money if they didn't have to do so many laser gun effects, and they just had He-Man, use his sword.
Yeah, and I guess it has that in common with Ninja Turtles too, but for an entirely different reason.
Yeah, because he's still killing people. It's just with guns.
Yeah, and he still hits people with a sword. He just doesn't do it very often.
Yeah. Yeah, the sword doesn't really become a thing until the climax where you get like the big sword fight, but like he'll use it here and there, but not really enough.
But see, this is Strickland doing the thing that he does in Back to the Future 2.
And I was like, oh, thank God he's
Slackers! No, he has to be alive so that we can watch him stay in eternity at the end and have
And he just has some random
concubines.
Yeah, concubine with him. Thanks, you came with a nicer word than I was going to.
He met her 6 seconds earlier and goes, "Why would I leave? I got a beautiful woman." I'm like, when did that happen? You were just in a battle 6 seconds ago.
He should have been like, "This is a land where bald people can be emperors. I'm staying."
This movie loves this prop.
Yeah, a little too much.
With the MacGuffin. And like it's kind of cool the way it spins and stuff the first time, but we just keep watching it. And I wonder, I don't of course mean to read too much into it. Maybe there's really nothing here. Yeah. Goddard kind of pretends like maybe it's deeper than it is, but even what he says is real generic about it. The idea of like the universe being music.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's not really anything there, but you could have made it about finding commonality with different kinds of people across the board, with like people alien from you, that music is the universal language. It doesn't do that.
No.
It absolutely has nothing to do with that idea.
No. And now we've just entered the climax of the first Sonic movie.
That's true. Here's Frank Langella on his giant wind turbine.
At least they made it look very toyetic. Like
Yeah.
he looks like he's on a giant toy.
No, I
That's kind
appreciate
of fun.
that.
Yeah. No, that's at least nice.
But again, we are an hour 10 minutes in. This should be 20 minutes into your movie.
This should have been the very first thing Skeletor did after he took his grand power.
This may be Conti's best work in the movie, though. I like the militant stuff here. It does sound very Star Wars, but it's less derivative than some other things.
Yeah, than other moments earlier.
Yeah, I like that. I don't think the soundtrack is good enough to be re-released as many times as it has. There's like a big, like 2-disc vinyl set for this movie. I think. Like I don't think the score is good enough to warrant that.
No. They should just release a score that's called like the He-Man or Masters of the Universe score, and then you listen to it and it's just like a greatest hits album of everything this is ripping off.
It should just be the score of this movie with Skeletor narrating the plot.
But not this
But
Skeletor.
the cartoon Skeletor?
That's exactly what I was gonna say, yes. And then Geldorf walks down an alleyway with He-Man.
And he says, I don't like adventures. And they use the cosmic key.
He-Man is shooting Megatron at Silver Surfer.
And then that version, that vinyl would be called the Skella Score.
Make it happen, Mattel.
Come on, Mattel, we need the Skella Score version. Speaking of Silver Surfer, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that apparently Mobius, of all people, did designs for the characters with this movie. And, well, I say apparently, Austin and I actually looked at them, and they're really cool drawings. And they look way neater than what's actually in the movie.
Yeah. No, it's the type of thing where if you were just to see that before this movie, you'd be like, oh man, they made like a really cool He-Man movie on the level of a Conan the Barbarian.
Credit,
and then you watch it. And,
yeah, I mean, credit where it's due to Goddard. Like, it proves that he really did, like, was a fan of comic stuff in even thinking to go to Mobius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
I mean, that is definitely the right kind of person to design a thing like this. It's just too bad that it was for canon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we get it. You have a big ship.
Look at me and my impressive ship.
It's also crazy. I mean, we keep talking about all the things that this movie's ripping off and that it's derivative of. There's a lot of Back to the Future even beyond Strickland. Like, there's vehicles that sound like the DeLorean.
Oh yeah. Well, and this is like a cross between the hoverboard, thank you, and the speeder from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, Thomas Lowe says Frank Langella did an interview about this movie and said he had a great time doing his scenes. He talked about that a lot. Like, he apparently immediately agreed to do this because he had a kid that was obsessed with He-Man. And then he just thought it was really fun to make. And I get the sense that he had more fun than anybody else on the set.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's just one of those actors that, like, no matter how bad the movie is, he's gonna show up and be cool.
I just love that he wasn't above this kind of material.
Yeah. Well, and it's also cool because he got to be Skeletor and Bela Lugosi. That's awesome.
And Nixon.
Of course. Now I just want to see cartoon Skeletor fight Futurama Nixon.
Frost versus Nixon versus Skeletor.
Yeah, there you go.
Have you ever seen Frost versus Nixon?
No, that came out when I was like a little too young to get into that kind of a drama, so I was like, ah.
It's excellent. Definitely
but
worth watching.
my mom really liked it, so at some point I'll go back and watch that.
Skeletor looks almost into the camera quite often, and I have no problem with it. Like,
no, I want him to keep staring into my soul. See, I think he looks better here because he's not as lit up.
yeah, but like I said, I like the close-ups on his face better than when we're farther off. And I mean, I'm with you on some of the makeup issues, but I still think he just looks more dramatic that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just because I'm liking what Langella's doing with his face, and I can see his performance.
I like that shot. The like one.
Okay, so I don't do this a lot, but I'm gonna read a little bit of history here instead of trying to just recall all of it, Austin, because this is very amusing, and I'm looking forward to seeing your reaction to some of it if you don't already know about it. So there was a sequel to this movie written.
Mm-hmm. I knew that.
And it was titled Masters of the Universe 2 Revenge of the Beast. And the script featured He-Man returning to Earth to battle Skeletor, who had returned to Earth and possessed the body of a big business entrepreneur named Dark. I'm reading this from Wiki. Taking control of the technology of Dark Industries in a new effort to take over the universe. This is poorly written, apologies. On Skeletor's trail, He-Man was to take on the guise of a professional quarterback to pursue his enemy undercover. Pro surfer Laird Hamilton was set to replace Dolph Lundgren as He-Man.
So we got even less of an actor.
Yeah. We didn't learn anything. We hired a different stunt double to play the character with a low budget of $4.5 million. The sequel was to be directed by Albert Pune of 1990 Captain America fame, consecutively with the aborted Spider-Man movie. But it was abandoned because Canon couldn't pay Mattel's fees. And I just think it's ridiculous to even think that you were going to make a sequel to a movie that you stopped production of before the movie was over.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's funny that you mentioned the Mattel fee thing, 'cause it's my understanding that the climax only gets filmed because Mattel puts up the money for it. And, like, they didn't pay all the fees at that point.
That is not what I read.
Oh, okay. That was what I'd heard.
That may, when you say the climax, I don't know how much of it you mean, because that's all real kind of complicated and dodgy.
Oh, I just mean like the He-Man Skeletor fight, where they can't afford to put lights up.
Yeah, so it's not the way Goddard talks about it in the commentary. Take it all with a grain of salt. Is that Canon was in bad shape financially and said, we don't have the money for you guys to even continue making the movie, so you have to finish tomorrow. Like, in 24 hours. And so it isn't that they didn't have the money, the way he talks about it, to keep the lights on. It's that he had to do something not very complicated that they could shoot in a few hours. So he turned the lights off and just did a lot of like lighting effects in post and stuff, so that they didn't have to do a big setup.
Oh, okay. So what I'd heard was
like that's apparently what he did. And then there's one part of that fight that they weren't even able to shoot at all, that they had to come back and do 2 months later on a different soundstage. And I'll point out the cut because it is obvious where it happens.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about with that.
Yeah, and he put up part of the money for that out of his own
I knew that
paycheck. Yeah,
I knew that. So what I'd heard was that Canon obviously had to pay Mattel for the license, and it was like an upfront half payment, and then after the movie they'd pay the second half. And they couldn't do the climax because they ran out of money. So Mattel was like, whatever, just take the money that would have gone to our second payment, and because you have to actually finish the movie. And the reason why they didn't have lights and stuff was because they couldn't afford to have a crew. But that was what I'd heard, so I don't know.
Okay, yeah, that is contradictory to what Goddard said.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's probably what he said.
But that is a single source that may not be entirely reliable. So this is the scene where she's going to shoot out a camera that's going to just disappear. And it's kind of wonderful. So if there is a message at all in this movie, it's spelled out to us real quick here, and then it's right back to the MacGuffin plot. And it's a real standard, generic, like, be yourself and have confidence kind of moral. There's only one of you, Kevin. I forgot his name until just now. There's only one of anybody. You know, your kind of typical believe in yourself message.
Yeah. Well, and then
which is weird because he's just been a side character this whole time, and now he's the most important. Like, is this an ensemble cast movie? Is He-Man the protagonist? Is Courtney Cox the protagonist?
Well, because and then in like a little bit we'll find out that Gandalf has the ability to like use time travel with his like cosmic key thing. So it's like, why didn't you just go back in time to before Skeletor took over?
And why is it so easy to send people in to different time periods? Like, it's easier to do that than it is to send them to different spatial coordinates, it seems like. Mm-hmm. Because you have to type in the spatial coordinates, but then in the movie, they wind up back in time because Courtney Cox, just before she disappears, is like, oh, wait a minute, I'm somewhere else I'd rather go. But she never tells him what it is, so I guess he also has telepathy? Like, I have no idea what's happening at the end of the movie.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Does not make any kind of sense. But it does make it seem way too easy to time travel.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really a magic hubcap. Magic was inside of you all along.
Yeah, now Garth Brooks is explaining that there's only one of him.
Like Highlander.
Yeah. I wish he was like, there can be only one young boy, and then he cut his head off.
Wait, you want Skeletor to show up in this scene?
Oh no, that was because this guy has the voice of cartoon Skeletor. Clearly.
Oh, I see what you're doing. I thought you were doing more Skeletor.
Oh no, it's hard to differentiate them.
Only one of you, Kevin! Only one of anybody!
Although now I want to see cartoon Skeletor be there to be like, there's only one of you, and one of me, and I am evil.
There's some of the worst technobabble in this movie that I've seen in really anything.
There's some of the worst of basically everything in this movie.
Okay, there's the kid that won the contest.
Yeah, and he's dressed up as an Ugnaught.
And he gets his name in the credits at the end.
Yeah, and they named him like Pig Boy.
Yep.
But it was like a thing where like they forgot that he'd won the contest, so they had to film it in the last second.
Oh, come on, Skeletor. If you're gonna go that far and just rip off General Zod, go all the way. Because he's like, I win. When he turns around, he should say, I always win!
I see you are predisposed to kneel before things that are skeletal. That's what he says when he walks into like a high school science class and they have like the skeleton in the corner.
That's amazing.
So if you don't know anything about...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you don't know anything about He-Man, like, do you know like any of this, like the sorceress and whatnot? Because this is like a weird movie that it feels like a sequel and that they don't explain anything.
No.
They just drop you in and they're like,
And again, I want
sink
to
or swim.
appreciate that we're not holding anybody's hands, but we're also not developing the mythology, so it feels generic.
Yeah, and like we open with Skeletor being like, "Hey, I finally won. You know, I just took over," but they don't have the money to show it, and it's like, well, it would have been cool to see that.
Yeah. It makes our heroes look a little incompetent, really.
Wake Seaman's just sitting on a mountain while Skeletor
Not doing anything, you know? If they're, like, regrouping after a big battle or something, you'd at least feel like they tried real hard. Maybe, like, Skeletor's forces were just too strong, and, you know, you make it like the rebellion at the beginning of Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Star Wars, He-Man is now in the slave Leia outfit.
He's also that's my other favorite He-Man line delivery. I'll never kneel to you. So, like I said earlier, Goddard was stuck with Dolph Lundgren. That was not his idea, and he really wanted to have another actor overdub all of his lines, which in this particular case would have been the correct choice. And he wasn't allowed to do that because of something in Dolph Lundgren's contract. So,
and I heard it was something to do with money, so it could, but it's probably something with
what I read was it was contractual.
Contract.
It sounds like there's a lot of kind of dispute about what the problems were with this movie.
Yeah.
But what we do know that's the clear just from watching the movie, but also Goddard talks about this in his commentary is. And by the way, we're talking a lot more about behind-the-scenes stuff than we usually do on a Rewind commentary, and that's because there's not a lot to talk about story-wise. But anyway, he did ADR all of his dialogue. Because Goddard didn't like the performance on set. And so this is ostensibly even better than what it originally sounded like.
Oh, boy.
See, there's Courtney Cox taking a nap on a bench like Jennifer in Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say like that other famous thing that she did on a bench. Scream.
Yeah, there's some bits for both of these actors, her and Robin McNeil, that feel like they're prophetic for things they'll do later in their career. Like Tom Paris has a history of getting arrested, and then there's some stuff that kind of reminds you of Scream here and there with her. Like, it's kind of interesting.
Well, and then there's like a funny Jennifer Aniston comparison where Jennifer Aniston started with Leprechaun and Courtney Cox is starting with this guy.
Oh, yeah, weird.
And Leprechaun is Warwick Davis, and this is Barry Bart, or I can't remember, but they're both in Willow.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch of connections.
Yeah, another 80s fantasy thing.
That also didn't have to go to Earth.
And I've never seen that.
That's my sister's favorite movie for some reason. I've
yeah,
never
see,
seen
this
it.
is my favorite Skeletor shot. Just the shadow on his face, and like maybe there could be more of that. But like when he turns this way and his eyes are huge, like I love that.
The master of the. Oh no, that's later.
That's later. It would have been great if he had yelled like when he becomes godlike, because I mean he's basically Thanos, right? I mean he's getting the gauntlet, like it's very Infinity Gauntlet before Infinity Gauntlet that hasn't even been written yet. But obviously he's doing Fourth World stuff, so he's our dark side. But anyway, it would have been great if when he becomes a god and he's got his golden armor and everything, if He-Man was like, I have the power. He's like, no, I have the power.
Yeah, that would have been great. So I just laughed at that shot at Strickland. I love how just I guess whenever people have been in action for a while, they just put like lines of black on them because He-Man's got it like all on him, and Strickland had like two across his head. Oh, there it is.
I actually kind of appreciate that he gets the title of the film in there just so that it kind of feels relevant in some way.
He should have said, "I have become masters of the universe," though.
Well, he's all of them.
Yeah.
And I am masters of the universe.
I am legion, for I am many.
He's got your typical like echoey god voice.
Yeah. Well, and then because He-Man is like always had the gay undertones from the beginning, Skeletor gets grand powers, and he becomes just like way more flamboyantly dressed.
Oh, I didn't think of that. But that feels like a real like DC or Marvel thing to do, where when you get all powerful, you get a big elaborate costume.
Yeah. No, it is.
I like that. Again, this has come so late in the movie that I'm kind of just exhausted at the point where we get to the cool stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And it doesn't help that we don't get the big epic battle that they were supposed to.
That was some good acting from Lundgren. That like.
Yeah, it's great. Another thing Goddard mentions in his commentary is that the reason they built this set to be multi-level is because they were supposed to have a big epic sword fight that would be on all these different levels, and then they don't get to use them for anything.
Well, and I want to know, because you have so many extras with like the black masks, how many of those people fell into the pits?
No extras were harmed in the making of this film. Or is it like Superman 2 where they fall in and then they come out a chute like outside of the castle, but you don't actually see it in the movie, so you just assume they're dead?
Yeah, it's like that. It's like the Willy Wonka kids.
Did you know that in Superman 2 that's only shown in a TV edit?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I've never seen the footage, but there's a TV edit where Ursa and Non are just like walking outside of the fortress.
Yeah, because it removes their powers.
Yeah. So I guess they're freezing. So that's a cool line. It's kind of random and out of nowhere. I don't know what it has to do with what's happening right now. It's kind of like a philosophical math question. Oh, look, we're at the Spawn movie.
I love how that car looks like they literally just like cut the frame.
Yeah, it's great. But when he says, and I think this is the like most memorable line for a lot of people in the movie. I think it's shown up in other He-Man places. I read that somewhere. Maybe like a comic thing or something. But the line is the loneliness of good as equal to the loneliness of evil. I like kind of the idea that there are sacrifices to be made on both sides, and we're both like playing these faded roles. That like somebody has to be evil.
Yeah, for sure.
There's this. What I'm dancing around is there's actually like a pathos that Frank Langella is playing with Skeletor, and he's obviously not. There's no background developed. We don't really know like how he got to where he is, and if there was ever any kind of goodness in him in the first place. It's just a real basic good versus evil story. So you kind of just assume Skeletor, big evil skeleton man, he was probably always evil, but there's like this almost like entitled sadness behind his eyes where he's like, I deserve to rule everything because I've been trying so hard for so long.
Yeah, because he's a big skullhead man. You see, we could have really explored that if the detective said, no Skeletor has ever amounted to anything in all of Eternia.
In the history of Eternia. No, you're right. He-Man does use guns way too much.
Yeah, he's just shooting everyone.
That feels like G.I. Joe influence.
Yeah.
Especially with the kind of gun he's holding right now. Like, how many G.I. Joe action figures had big guns like that?
But it just feels to me like they went, okay, we're making an action film, and we're not creative enough to figure out how to have your main character only wield a sword.
Yeah, I think it might have just been a mistake on the director's part where he's thinking, we're going to have this big sword fight at the end, so I don't want my main character to use a sword too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it was maybe just a misguided choice.
Yeah, it's possible. You could have gotten, like, way further than the cartoon did with that. Like, have him cut off Beastman's arm or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's obviously not a violence issue because we've got blood in this movie. He just got whipped a bunch.
Oh, it's so bad.
And what's weird is he says it twice in the movie. He says it again right at the end, and
because they recreate the shot from the cartoon.
Yeah, and it sounds better the second time. The first time it's like, I have deep power.
Skeletor's line there should have been, "What? What are you talking about?"
So yeah, the end of this, and I explained already why this happened, or as far as we understand it, but like it feels hobbled together a little bit, actually, like the end of the Spawn movie.
Well, this whole
I
thing
can tell
just
more of
feels-
what's happening,
but like also shot wise, like this looks like an assembly cut. Like it looks unfinished.
that's because they had an afternoon to shoot it,
Yeah.
and then that was it,
Like this looks terrible.
and then they didn't even finish it. And in his commentary, Goddard talks about this, like, you know, it's compromised, it's not what we wanted to do, but look how good it looks. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, you do you, boo. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, and then it's real obvious that this is where it's shot 2 months later on a soundstage. Like, look how different even the video quality looks.
Yeah.
So now they're not even there anymore.
Mm. No, and you can tell. Like this looks terrible.
Yeah, it's weird when what already kind of feels like a B movie suddenly looks relatively a lot more like a B movie.
Skeletor's like hood falls off mid-fight, and then it's back on in the next shot.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Off when he's falling. I didn't the first time. I just noticed it there.
Yeah, interesting.
And he gets every 80s villain death.
That's right. He's got the Darth Maul fall, except he doesn't get cut in half.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's also the Emperor fall. And...
He should have like imploded like the one from Ninja Turtles 3.
Do we actually get... Yeah, where he just dissolves? Do we actually get... I forget. That shot from above in Star Wars with the Emperor? Like, do we actually see him drop like that? I think we do, don't we?
Yep.
With the lightning everywhere?
Yeah. Yeah, that's Die Hard, and that's
Yeah, so this is ridiculous.
89.
Like, how much time has passed?
We've never even seen this woman.
Yeah.
He's wearing new clothes, too.
And we know that's not a deleted scene because they used everything.
Oh, and He-Man's got his full costume again.
No, I'm kidding. There actually, I think, was some stuff they shot that they didn't use. Because apparently, and mercifully, because according to Goddard, the The sorceress has a really long speech here that they cut.
Oh, thank God.
Is it the sorceress or is it Tila? I can't remember. Somebody has a speech where they... No, I think it's the sorceress. Where they go, like, to every single character and say something.
I like that. Don't say goodbye, say good journey. Like, it's this, like, really emotional farewell. Oh, I forgot he had, like, little bow ties in his hair.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
That's terrible.
Goddard said in his commentary that in early screenings of this movie, people cried here, and I don't believe him.
I mean, I think they probably did, because they wasted their life.
Robert said, how did Cap not bring up Batman 89 as an example? Because that happens outside. I mean, I'm just thinking of... I mean, you're right. That's also, like, a villain that drops from a high place, but I'm thinking of...
I referenced 89, so we got it in there. Don't worry.
No, that's good. I missed it, but that's good.
No, like I said, that was just every 80s villain death. It's also RoboCop.
Yep. Yeah, we always kill villains from a high place.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this doesn't make any kind of sense.
He just knows.
Yeah, how would he know how far to send her back?
Troll dolls always know.
Why doesn't he mention time travel until that scene?
Because, like, the movie, like, they could have used time travel way earlier.
Yeah, just don't think about it.
Skeletor, like, killed, like, all these people getting in.
A couple more things about Courtney Cox real quick, because I meant to mention this earlier, but her friend at the beginning is named Monica.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Well, now she's wearing, like, an Amish outfit.
Like I said, like a lot of weird kind of foreshadowing things for people later in their career. Like, the first thing she's in, and there's a character in it named Monica. And then the other thing is... I mentioned Albert Pune was supposed to direct the sequel if that had been made, and he made another movie from this year that she's also in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 'cause this is like her first movie role, isn't it?
Yep, her very first.
She'd only done that Bruce Springsteen video.
Yep. Yeah, that's where Goddard found her. And so he actually was responsible for getting some of these people's careers started.
Do you think it's weird that there's, like, no love interest for He-Man? That's, like, surprising we didn't do that.
I guess that's true. Well, I say that, but it again doesn't really feel like it's his movie.
Yeah, no, that is true. And I'm sure Goddard fought for him to end up with Courtney Cox, but it didn't happen.
You think so?
No.
Well, I guess it's surprising in the same way that, like, not doing Prince Adam is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and not doing Prince Adam's weird. Though I should also mention there were early drafts where She-Ra was supposed to be, at least in the Eternia beginning.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Senior Six says He-Man's love interest was Tila. They don't really do anything with it?
Oh my god.
Like, are they actually together? Like, I forget now. Maybe there's a couple scenes that deal with that, but...
Do you know what Amazon's trying to play now? Is like because you watched Masters of the Universe, you'll want to watch this
Let
next?
me guess. Is it Rings of Power?
I wish. Now I wish it was that. No, it's Spaceballs.
Oh, that's great! We basically have Spaceballs in this movie.
Fooled you.
I mean, like, literally the Spaceballs, like, the Stormtroopers, they look like Spaceball Stormtroopers.
Yeah.
And that was the same year or the year after?
I'm not sure.
That's right around here.
Oh, special designs by Mobius.
Mobius, yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Another movie I meant to compare this to some that I'll just tack on real quick. There's Michael Westmore's credit. That I'll just tack on real quick is there's bits of this that remind me a lot of Last Starfighter.
Oh, sure, yeah. I don't remember that movie super well. Like, I know we watched it.
It's definitely better than this movie.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
And this movie has a real early example for this kind of thing of an after credit sequence or sequence scene. A
Yeah,
real,
and I turned the movie off when I hit credits, and it wasn't until you told me. So I don't even know what the after credit scene is going into this.
I mean, most people wouldn't think to watch it all the way to the end because we didn't do that much back then.
Yeah, no kidding.
It will be fun to watch you react to that in real time.
All I know is that it sets up Skeletor or something with him, but I don't know what.
That's all it is. It's like
Yeah.
6 seconds.
Oh, is it just gonna be like, I'm not dead.
Basically, yeah.
I feel happy.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he's got this giant smile on his face because it's Frank Langella going, I get to be in another, and then that doesn't happen.
Oh.
But it's so weird that in the sequel he would go back to Earth?
Well, Robert, I think, in the comments said that that Skeletor plot is just the Red Skull plot in that Captain America movie he made.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, Pune repeated himself a lot.
Mm-hmm. No kidding. That Captain America movie also sucks.
I mean, not that he was writing that movie, but
yeah. But there's weird things like that
yeah.
with directors who don't write things. Absolutely. Oh my god. I love that. Just for Mr. Lundgren, drama coach, speech coach, trainer. I've never seen that before where it's like this person had all these.
Yeah, I really don't understand that title. Like, Revenge of the Beast. You'd think it'd be like Return of Skeletor, Revenge of Skeletor, The Beast. Is Skeletor the Beast?
Skeletors of Wall Street.
Yeah, it was pretty clear it was going to have some sort of heavy-handed moral about that.
No, what if you watch that movie, Cap, and it's just Wolf of Wall Street, like a shot-for-shot remake, but with Skeletor.
Okay, so they did put Burger King and Pepsi.
Oh, okay.
In the credits here, I didn't notice that before. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, it's okay.
Cannon is bankrupt. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, here we go. Here he comes in slow motion. And then they freeze it. He just says, I'll be back. It's just his head.
They filmed him in a bathtub.
That's exactly what it looks like.
That was terrible. That's like the worst sequel setup I've ever seen.
Oh, it's rough. But when I was a kid, it blew my mind because I'd never seen an after credit scene, and I was like, wait, there's another thing?
What would you do, Cap, if Mario and Luigi came in with that girl from that movie, and they were like, you gotta come with us, He-Man?
Skeletor's in Dino Hatton.
And then it cuts to Skeletor and King Koopa in the bath.
You gotta help us fight Skeletor.
Skeletor, he's back. He's with King Koopa.
Well, this time we've just got a couple of tweet-length reviews, so let's read those real quick, and then we'll give our ratings. From Patreon, Sakib Tariq says, Frank Langella, the score and set design are the standout aspects of the film. Unfortunately, it still kind of sucks. And Michael Martin says, Frank Langella gives an enjoyable performance as Skeletor, but the rest of the movie is a handful of sci-fi B-movie clips stapled onto a generic 80s teen movie. That's a good way to put that. It is kind of that. Yeah, do you think that was an attempt at making it accessible to everybody, where it's like, well, we've got the, kind of the toys in there for the kids, but then we got to try to get teenagers to see it because those are the people that are mostly going to movies in the summer?
Possibly.
And then Jajira just says, best New Gods movie I've ever seen, which is what John Byrne said after it came out.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he was like, here's all that analyze, and Skeletor's dark side, and well, Austin, why don't you go ahead and give us your rating, sir? Where do you put it on the new hero to villain scale?
So I was forget. So it's villain.
So very bottom
Nemesis
is Nemesis, and then
okay.
it's villain, and then
gonna...
hero was mid range, and then he's like, I don't need to hear anymore, and then it's superhero, and then it's legend.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with villain.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I can't go all the way to supervillain because there are way worse movies than that, or all the way to Nemesis because there's way worse movies than this. But
the main thing it has is it's just boring.
I definitely have to, or I guess we called it supervillain. We don't have villain. We have hero and superhero, but we didn't put villain there because I wanted to just do 5.
Well, yeah, Nemesis is close enough. That's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would go villain.
It's a supervillain before it's a Nemesis.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks a lot for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, Austin's not going to be with us for the next show because he's going to be on vacation. So I'm going to have Kareem talking about the both Ultimate Avengers movies. We're going to try to knock those both out in one night. So join us in 2 weeks for that. And right now, I want to say thanks to all of our Patreon producers. And if you'd like to become a producer, you go to patreon.com/geekvolution, and the $10 tier makes that possible. You can hang out with us in the Discord, and you can help us select films and all kinds of other great perks there. Talk to us once a month there in the Discord live, and thanks to everybody that helps us out on Patreon. But I want to say thanks to the producers individually, like I always do at the end of the show, including this is a new one Reply, Joe Turner, Bill Mills, Chewbacca's Lover, Dr. Hello, Elliot Slater, Goofster123, Hayden Spring, Ironic Pinball, Jojira, Matt Bat 68, Michael Martin, SS Jerry, Stone Gassman, Super Billy, Thomas Edgehill, Adam March, Caleb, Damon Begay, Hot Soup, Jacob Schneider, Jonathan Campbell, Justin Hayes, Kareem Roberts, Matthew Brody, Michael Austin Gulick, Miguel Rodriguez, The Day Ghost, Unknown Passenger, Wendell Jones, and Zach. Where was it on Zach? It's just Zach.
He'll just never get a last name, as much as I complain about it every show.
Every show, yeah. Next time I'll go from Zach all the way up. Austin, any final words about Masters of the Universe? We did it, folks. We beat Skeletor. He's not coming back, even though he says he's coming back. He's just swimming in the pink goop from Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, he's in like the vat of acid from '89.
Yeah, those
I
two
could have
things.
made him Skeletor.
Sorry, what?
Like if we made that now, he would probably just look like a guy the whole movie. And then the end would be he gets out of that vat and he's Skeletor now.
It's true. At least he's Skeletor the whole movie.
Mm-hmm. And he would be like, I am Skeletor now.
Oh yeah, he'd have that voice?
Yeah.
He'd be like, I'll be back!
No, because it always breaks my heart that like every 80s cartoon villain sounds like that, and then you watch the movies and they always have deeper voices. It's so sad. The worst is Cobra Commander.
Folks, I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Austin, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time, folks. Bye, everybody.
See ya.